Hi, Kat here for Lightwave Digital. In this video, I'm going to show you a really nice snow effect that I did for a film called The Christmas Cabin a number of years ago. It was produced by Quantum Arc Digital Media here in Las Vegas, and the show did very well on the Harmonic channel, like most shows of that nature. And as you can see here in Fusion, I've got the actual render that I did for one of the shots playing back here. I want to explain something first before we jump over to Lightwave layout. There's a little bit of movement in here that's kind of jarring, just playing on its own. It's because this was a tracked shot, so the camera Lightwave was moving back and forth. So we won't have that problem when we do our snow in the Lightwave layout because it'll just be stationary. But this was tracked and I don't have the plates for this film anymore, so I can't show you what the end results were, but it tracked perfectly. So anyway, we're going to hit stop on this, and I'm just going to zoom in here, and you can actually see that these little particles have snowflakes on them. And they look really convincing when they're in comp. So let's get rid of this. We don't need this anymore. I'm going to just make sure that our memory is clear. Okay, and I can minimize that. We might go back to Fusion later. So first thing we need to do is make some snowflakes. Let's jump over to Modeler. And for this, we're going to go and create a box using the numeric tool, hitting N to bring that tool up. And we're going to put these down to like 0.05 or even smaller. Let's not go 50 millimeters. That's 5 centimeters. Let's go 10 millimeters. And we'll go 10 millimeters. And we don't need any depth, so we'll go 0. We'll make sure they're on the y-axis. And we'll just hit A while we're sitting here. We can still leave that numeric box tool up so we can zoom in and make sure that it's on one of these planes, and then we can hit enter. Now I'm going to select that polygon, and I'm going to flip this so it's looking at camera when we have the snowflake loaded. Like normally, I would recommend leaving it this way because all objects should be built towards the z-axis where its nose or its front end would be. For example, if you had a character, it would be facing this direction, and its arms and legs would be pointing somewhat forward, its feet would be pointing forward. But for this, we can just flip that and leave it. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to hit Q and call this Flake 1. All right, we're going to remove any specularity just for the time being. We're going to make sure that this is set to almost 100% white. Doesn't need to be super bright, just a little bit lower. Okay, so that's good. All right, now I need multiple copies of this object. So let's go and save this. And I've already got some pre-built snowflakes, but we're going to start from scratch here. So we're going to go New Flakes. Okay. And we're going to go Flake 1. Okay, and I'm going to copy this, put it into a new layer or a new object if I wanted. I'm going to keep them separate as objects though. So I'm going to go and change the surface name on this and call it Flake 2. If I can type properly this evening. There we go, Flake 2. And again, we'll save this object as Flake 2. Okay, and one more time, copy it, hitting Control-C, new object, Control-V to paste it in here, Q to change its surface name, so we can keep it separate and keep it aligned in terms of matching the object name. So this will be Flake 3. That'll give me enough snowflakes for variants if I want. I would generally recommend going up to 5 or 10. Just to make things work. But I only have source material to make 3 right now, so we'll keep it simple and leave it at 3. So we'll go and save this. And Flake 3. Okay. You'll notice I didn't name them. I just named them using the spelling of the number, and that keeps them organized in a little bit of a better fashion when we go over to layout. Now, I'm not going to send the objects over directly. I'm going to do something first. I'm going to texture one flake, and then we'll bring the other ones in. So let's go and load the first flake. Okay, there's Flake 1. All right, so I get a polygon here that's very bright white. Nothing crazy. Next step here, and you'll notice that my grid is very small. It's basically 10 millimeters across to 1 centimeter. You can see the grid assigned there. We can use our left bracket key to zoom out or zoom in on the right bracket keys, depending which way you're going. And let's go load some images. Now, I built some Snowflake images a long time ago and also downloaded some off the web that were just pretty much good to go type things that I could use in the surfacing of these snowflakes. So I already have 3 examples here. Let's go and use one that's got a pre-built alpha in it, which is this one. Okay, so we'll go and open it up, and we'll just leave that there for now. We're going to engage VPR, and we're going to texture this. All right, now I don't need to necessarily see the background here, so I'm going to go to Scene. We're going to go to Compositing, use background color, turn it off. That white background, or that background in general, is being driven by this gradient backdrop, and the environment light is using global, which means use the backdrop, and we don't need to be time dependent. Okay, so I'm also going to turn specularity off on this, and I'm going to turn diffuse off on this because we don't need it. I want my snowflakes be lit just using directional light. Another option for this, of course, is to go into the scene editor, so it's not doing any kind of evaluation in render at all, and just disable it, and I can also hide it from view in OpenGL. So I can turn these back on and it wouldn't have any problem with it. So we can just do that. Okay, let's get to surfacing this. I've already got my surface editor up, but if you need it, just hit shift click and click on the surface that you want to texture, and you'll be brought up with the menu here. Now, for this particular surface, I'm not going to use the principal BSDF. I find that for something like this, just the standard shader works great, and we can work with it from here. We're going to pull the diffuse up to 100. We're going to turn the specularity off just for the moment, and we're going to go into the T for texture layer here, and we're going to use a planar texture, and we're going to use that image. So you'll notice that it didn't really do much, but we did see a shift in the color. So let's go and automatically size this, and you'll see now that we've got a white texture on there, but we don't necessarily have a shape that's been traced out or punched out because we don't have what's called a clip map. So to use this clip map, we're going to just copy the color one, and we're going to punch it into the texture layer for the clip map. And now we've got something that's punched out. Now, if I turn the compositing back on, and we turn that environment light back on, you would see that we can actually see through that to a degree. We can actually see that gray background. But it's inverted, so we need to invert this. So I'm going to just turn this light off again because I know what I'm looking at. And we're going to just hit invert this layer. But it doesn't change the inversion. Why is that? Well, it's because this image has an embedded alpha channel in it, and it's causing problems here. So let's change this to disabled, and now we can see that it's just using the values of white against black to punch that image out. So if I invert it, you see that the change is present. Now to just check this, we'll turn that environment light back on, and we can see now that we've got a snowflake. All right, so that's flake 1, and we can indeed use a little bit of specularity on this now, like maybe 15%. And if you wanted to have like a little bit of glint, maybe 1% for reflection. But because there's really nothing in the scene for it to reflect, it doesn't matter. All right, so that's flake 1. Let's go and save that object. There's only one object in the scene right now, so I can just go save, save all. Okay. Or if with the object selected, go File, Save, Objects, Save Current Objects. Same thing, basically, but only if you have that one object loaded. Otherwise, if you had multiple objects loaded, it would save all those objects. Okay, now that I've got that, I can hit Save. But boom, it'll ask me if I want to overwrite it. Yes, of course, we do. It's fine. Let's go and load another object. Let's go and load object flake 2. Okay, same problem that we had before, but now I can go and copy this, and I've already got one set up, so let's paste it in there. Now I've got 2 flakes, and I can move flake 2, but we want to change this one around and make it different. So let's move this off to the side here and texture flake 2. Let's get our other images in here, and because these ones don't have alpha, they're going to be easier to work with because I can just literally load them. But there, you see that this image has some problems. These PNGs, when I downloaded them off the internet, had issues. And it became kind of a problem for me to use them properly. And this is part of the problem with PNGs in general, is that not all PNGs are created equal on the internet. Some of them are 8-bit, some of them are 16-bit in terms of total color. So 8 bits per pixel per channel, or 16 bits per pixel per channel, plus a transparency mode. Similar to GIF, it's not a real alpha channel, it's a transparency mode. And sometimes different programs will read those or create them differently, or when you save them to the web, some of that information is tossed away. So you have to be careful with this. In order to solve this problem, we're going to do something very interesting to this image. Let's go and get the first thing set up though. Let's go and make sure that our texture is calling for that other image. So this one is the nicer crystal. There we go. And we also have to change the clip map. Okay, well, we can see that we've got this problem here, okay? This is just the image not understanding what to do with itself, and it's because it's got alpha enabled. So if we hit alpha disabled, you'll see that that problem exists there because this is a corrupt PNG. But if I just go alpha only, I can just get the shape of that instead. Much better. But let's make a copy of this. So right-clicking on the image, you'll get a delete. What we want to do is we gotta duplicate it, okay? And we'll see that we have a duplicate plus, and we can go in and we can change this. So we'll go disabled, okay? And we'll go to the color and change it to alpha plus. And that way it'll actually have that lovely tooth to it from the original image, but we're using the disabled alpha channel version as the clip map so that we don't run into those weird problems with the corrupt image. And that's just basically because the transparency, there's probably a couple of bits missing in terms of data, and it's got issues. So we just turn the alpha channel off, or otherwise in the original just use alpha only, and we get what we want. Now we can recycle this map because this is kind of nice for us. Let's hit copy, current layer, and put it into the specularity channel here. So we're going to replace it, and let's see what that looks like over here. We're going to turn that out, and we're going to go and use this as additive. So now, when I throw light at it, it should behave a little bit differently. You can have a little bit more reflection on it. And you can even increase its bump. Okay. If you want to turn it up or down, you can. Pop it into the diffuse channel if you want. Just recycling that texture over and over again can really help it out. You can see that nice change there. Let's go back to that specular channel and we'll invert it. So now that when we go and rotate the light, making sure we've got the right one selected, we've got little glints of it on the edges. It's got some depth to it. Okay, so now that's good. Let's save this object. Let's make sure it's just selected, although we can use save objects as well. Okay, so we'll just go save object. All right, and make sure that we're overwriting just that one. Let's go and load object, get the third one textured here. Okay, same thing. We're going to copy this texture. We're going to paste it in here, and that's going to give us another snowflake with the same pattern, but now we need to change the image maps for this one. So let's go and load that. So we got PNG 7560, PNG 728, nicer. Let's go and load the other one, which is this one, 7551. Okay. Again, same problem. We've got a lot of weird stuff going on in here, but we can rescue this in Lightwave, just making sure that we're working with the right channels. So for this one, we'll do a clone of it right away, and we'll go duplicate it. And this one, we'll just use alpha only. All right, let's go up to here. We'll go alpha only. Okay, not bad. We've got to change the other ones. Alpha only, because we know that's the one that's got only alpha on. All right. Alpha only. And then finally, the bump map. Let's use that one with the image. Yeah, okay, cool. Now it doesn't look so hot right now because we need to make sure that our clip map is changed. This one again is alpha only. Now we've got basically a third flake. It looks pretty good. This one in the background I think needs some help. So we'll go back to flake 1 and we'll go over to this texture here and we'll copy it, copy current layer, and we can pop it into the clip map, or pardon me, the bump map. All right, paste, add to layers, bump. Didn't really do too much for us, so we might need a procedural in here to help it out. Let's go and add layer, procedural. Okay, and we'll go automatic sizing. Go zoom into this one here. Go and increase it to 100%. And we'll use additive, so it's adding more of that on there. We'll give it some contrast, 50%. And I think we'll need some specularity in there as well. So we'll take these two layers, copy them, current layer, pop them in here, paste, add to layers. You remove that none layer that's in the bottom. And I think we'll need a little bit more help with this. Let's make sure that flake 1 is rotated a little bit more. And I think what we've got to do is we've got to shrink this down so it's like 1 millimeter by 1 millimeter. All right. Off into the bump map. Same kind of idea. It's better. Perfect. All right, of course we can go and take that, copy that, and put that into the specular layer, so it's helping it out there. And maybe use that as alpha. Pop it in between those two layers. So it's mixing the original and these two turbulence textures together. Let's go 75 or 80. Yep, very cool. So now when this rotates, it'll catch light in a different way, but they're not double-sided. Well, we definitely need them to be double-sided because when we put this onto a particle system, we need them to be able to spin and rotate, and we're going to see the backside of them. So we're going to shift select all three of those textures, and we're going to use double-sided. So now when I go and rotate this object, it should give us a double-sided effect. Let's make sure that that's working properly. Yeah, and it does. Now the reason why you're only seeing one side of it for a second there is because we've turned that environment light off, so there's no light on the other side. It's just very directional, and that's all there is to it. So let's go back to the scene editor and turn that environment light back on. And we'll go into the compositing tab, turn background color back on for use background color to cover up that white or that gradient from the environment light. And now we've got something that works very nicely. I can now disable the actual light from contributing to the scene, and it gives us what we need. So now we've got both sides. Now we don't need to go overboard with this light. We can also use something called ambient light, which might work just as well. And I don't necessarily want it to be visible to camera or affect specularity or any volumetrics. So we'll go and dial this back to like 15%. Because we don't want to lose that tooth on the texture. So we can see now when we rotate that light around, it's going to pick up the specular highlights on these things very nicely. Might have to do it on this like Flake 3, but I think you get the idea here. All right, so let's save these objects, save all objects, because they're pretty much done. All right, and now comes the fun part. Let's get these onto a particle system. Now, when I go over to texture shaded solid mode, these are generally not going to display very nicely. Clip maps are one thing that the OpenGL mode will not display. However, if you do put a transparency map on these, they will. I generally like to use clip maps or something like this because it's really just an on-off kind of thing for Lightwave to evaluate and render. And because they're particles and they're going to be moving with motion blur, you really don't see any of the edges. Now, that's a preference of mine. If you want to do this where you're going to see large snowflakes like really up close and they're going to be slow moving, you probably want to use transparency instead, but that's up to you. All right, next step here is that we're going to need a particle system to put these things on. So before I do that, I'm going to actually take all these flakes and just set them back to their original points of origin. So we're going to make sure these are all reset. There's probably a faster way to do this, but just for now, we'll just leave them like that. So they all will stack up on top of each other just like that. Okay, so now let's take a look at getting a particle system in here. For something like that, we can use a couple of different options. It's just going to basically be a null for the most part. So we'll create a null called emitter snow. Okay, and we're going to put this somewhere above camera in a more human realistic scale. So I'm going to use the right bracket keys to zoom out on the grid here. All right, go to like 2 meters, maybe 1 meter, and we'll move our camera back to -5 meters. All right, and we'll put our null up around about 4 meters. That should be out of camera frame, so we'll take a look at it through the camera lens. Yep, that's good. All right, so back to perspective view, and let's get a particle effects emitter on top of this snow emitter. Hit P from properties to bring up the object properties for this, and we're going to go over to a tab called effects, and we're going to immediately add a effects emitter. Now you have options here that will change the type of the generator and by what second or frame or speed or collision event. For right now, we're going to go with frame. And you can see that it's already generating particles. But this is not really the best shape. I want something that's going to go from frame edge to frame edge. So we'll change this to box because we do want it from a box. We don't need a size effect change. And now we can go in and change the generator size to something like 8 meters by 5 meters. So we've got something that has some variance from where it's generated on this axis, but also we've got something that's generating particles further away from us, so that when we do have snowfall, it's going to look pretty nice. Now, we've got a couple of other options here. We can use Lightwave's particle effects emitter built-in gravity or motion. And we'll need a little bit of explosion on this. Not much, just a little bit. Okay. And we also want to make sure that we have a large particle limit. So we're going to go to 10,000. Okay, well, let's go back over to the particle generator, and we'll change the lifetime. We want this stuff to live for a pretty good, period of time. Let's go 240, and we're going to change up some other numbers in here, specifically the particle resistance. This is a function that may confuse some people, but it's really just a plus or minus number of how much variance you're going to get off of the base resistance. So we're going to just go 0.1, okay? So when these things are generated, but they're not all going to fly through the medium with the same kind of continuity, okay? Now, we want some rotation on this, random rotation scale. So we're going to punch in some numbers here for minimum max rotation. So let's go -1, -1, -1, 1, 1, 1, and let's change the spin. So -1, -1, -1, and this is in seconds, so we'll go 1, 1, 1. This will just give them a basic spin. Okay. Now let's go to some of the other options here. We don't need to detect interaction for themselves or self-interaction. If we want to do this, we could, but it may require a little bit more time on calculation. But right now, because the particle system in Lightwave is just going, hey, you're just generating particles with a couple of parameters on it, it generates them very quickly, and we're doing 10,000 particles with no problem. That's all we need to know. All right, let's talk about gravity. Again, as I said before, there are a couple of options here. We could add a gravity and a wind, or we can drive it through its own internal gravity. So we'll subtract down, let's see, 5 meters, not full 9.8 meters per second, because that would kind of override natural air resistance for a particle or snowflake. So we'll try something a little bit more like 3. Okay. Apparent motion, if we want to move this around, we'll just set it to 50. So let's see what that looks like. So now we've got some snow. It's looking a little bit more like rain, though. Well, we can't really tell unless we have something up against the background that's kind of in scale. If you've ever seen the movie The Aviator, where Howard Hughes, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, was trying to film the action sequences for Hell's Angels against clear sky, and it doesn't translate to speed, and he keeps asking people to go faster, 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 and then he realizes he needs clouds to translate the speed because he needs something in the background for parallax. That's the same thing. But I can tell you right now, this is already a little too fast. So let's go -1. Okay. That's a little bit better. But what we're not seeing on here is something that would give us an indication that there's some kind of wind in there, or variance that would help us out. So let's add a little bit of that variance, and we can do that just through vibration. So we'll go 0.5, and this will help. You can see they just got a little bit of vibration on them. I think maybe we'll go a little bit more. Let's go 2. Okay, not bad. And if necessary, we can give ourselves a little bit of pre-roll here so that they're in frame. So we'll go to -50 frames, and we'll go to the General tab, and we'll go Fixed. We're going to start at -50. Okay, or -50, pardon me, not 5. There we go. All right, so they're basically falling in frame. We will go a little bit further, -100. This is why I set the particle lifetime to be a little bit longer than my shot, because we can see now that when we're -100, we're running out of particles, and we need to have more of them. So let's go 300, and we may need more particles. So let's go and add another 5,000 to this. So 15,000 particles, and we've got a lot going on here. Okay, fantastic. Still needs a little bit more. We need this to be box. That'll help. Still needs a little bit more variance on this, but it's starting to look pretty good. To help out with the variance, let's go and add ourselves a little bit of wind. All right. So we're going to do directional wind, and we're not going to use any fall off mode, and we're going to give ourselves a little bit of a vector. We'll kind of blow it away from camera a little bit, and we'll blow it X just a little bit, And we don't want any upper wind. We can just probably set this to 0 and let gravity do its thing. And now we've got snow. Let's take a look at that. Starting from frame 0. And we'll just play it back here. I would like a little bit more play on this. So we'll hit stop. And we got a couple of options. In the emitter, we've got a velocity set of functions, meters per second. We've also got the explosion, vibration, and we can put textures or envelopes on any of these. I think what we'll do is we'll use vibration, and we'll place a procedural texture on here. We'll use a procedural texture. We'll go contrast 50%. Just remove that underneath layer there. And we'll call it alpha, even though it's really only going to drive using the white values. But now you can see very gently when it goes through, you've got a procedural texture that's effectively modifying that vibration. All right. I think that works, but we need a little bit more generation off the top because we don't want it to start like halfway, like it just started coming down. We want it to always be consistent. So let's play around with some of the generation numbers here. Let's go minus 150, and that should give us enough pre-roll. But we're starting to run out of frames there. So we can change the birth rate also if it's a little too dense. And that will give us more frames that are consistent because we're birthing less amount of particles, so there's more particles to let it go. Now we're hitting right to the edge, like the particle emitter is expending all 15,000 of those particles over the course of almost 300 frames. So pretty good stuff. All right, now it's time to get the snowflakes onto this. Let's save this before we proceed. Save scene as. So there's an example of my other snow. We'll just call this new snow. And let's go over to the instance tab. We're going to add an instancer. Instance generator there. Double click it. We're going to be presented with the instance generator. So we'll take the first item selected, and we're going to go add object, adds flake. Okay. And we're going to turn the visibility of this on so we can see what's going on. We're going to change not from the type for the instance generator to work with from item pivot to particles. And now you can see that you've got these little particles everywhere that are on some of the instances. Now, right now it's applying it effectively to all of the instances evenly, and that's what this weighting number is. We want to change this so that we've got all of them. But in order to do that, we've got to go and grab them. So let's make sure that we've got the other ones. We can add them from here. We go edit, add from layout. There's flake 2. Make sure that these are showing as textured, shaded solid. And these are all now preset as particles. Okay, so let's go and change a couple of factors here. We want to change up the weight amounts. But it's basically pre-balanced it across all of these. But let's do something with their size, the random rotation, all that kind of thing. So let's shift click because we can select all of those. And we're going to go minimum scale, we'll go 50%, we'll go 150%. Okay. We're going to go and change the rotation on the rotation tab. And we can use a couple different inputs for this. We definitely want it to be random, but because we are going to use the inputs from the particle generator, that helps. But we can add some more here, and this is in degrees, so we can go minus, say 1080. Okay, and let's say 1080 again. So it's basically spinning all the way around several times. And this will give us a really, really nice snow effect. Now, what does this look like in VPR? Well, let's figure that out. Let's save what we're doing. Control S to save the scene. And we'll save it. All right, let's enable VPR. And now we've got some really awesome little varied snowflakes. And if we want, we can push our camera in here a little bit, so we can see what they look like. Oh, that's flake 2. We don't want to do that. We want the camera. All right, so we can move them in. We can fly through, and you can see they actually have little flakes on them, which is perfect. And the variance on this can be changed based on which flake you want to drive differently. Let's make sure that that's changed to texture shaded solid. You can drive this with nodes. If you only want a certain amount of flakes versus another amount of flakes, let's change that, and it'll change up how many flakes show up in different ways. So let's go break it down. So it's 25, 25. Whoops, too many zeros. And we'll go one more, 25. So that we have like a total of 100, and we've got flakes that are all balanced based off of the amount of objects that we've got spread across that instance system for those particles. So very straightforward to do. You just need the objects, and if I had more flakes, it would definitely help, because it would help with breaking up the variance. But we've got enough spin, stretch, scale, rotation, randomization, rotation, working with the particle system. And of course, these will blur properly. Enable motion blur. And now you've got flakes. Works beautifully. Worked very well on the show. And it didn't take very long to set up. So you can fly through these. These are real geometry. So if you want to fly through them, you're going through a snowstorm, whatever it might be. Or if you want to push into a cabin door entrance with an overhang, you've got a collision object over top of it. You can block those snowflakes. You can have them blow off of trees like I did in one shot. All kinds of fun stuff. So that is how you can make really fast snowflakes using simple polygonal planes, a couple of shapes from the internet that you can download for snowflakes or anything else you want to have fall. These could be little presents, maybe little reindeers, whatever you want to do. And the particle effect system working with instancing will give you this effect very quickly. All right, thank you for watching.